Introduction. We know that reproduction is the ability of all organisms to produce young ones similar to themselves in most of characters. Yes, we can also say the process by which species is continued is called reproduction.
Objectives. At the end of this lesson, you'll be able to define reproduction, find out importance of variation, identify types of reproduction, understand the asexual reproduction, understand fission, study the process of budding, understand process of spore formation, understand regeneration, understand process of fragmentation, find out vegetative reproduction, exact copies of organisms. Various organisms of a species look similar because their designs are similar. By the process of reproduction, the blueprints of the body design are produced. We already know that every organism is made up of cells, and each cell has chromosome in nucleus. These chromosomes bear information for transmission of characters from parents to their offsprings in the form of DNA. DNA carries information for the formation of proteins. After each cell division, DNA is replicated and 2 copies are produced. As a result of cell division, each cell is divided into 2 daughter cells. Importance of variation. At the time of copying, when there is change in DNA information, then the proteins formed are different and hence there occurs variation from the parent species, which is the basis of evolution. Niches are filled up by populations of organisms as a result of process of reproduction. Due to external factors like change in temperature, water level, meteorite hits, etc., there is drastic change in niche. As a result, entire population perishes. But there are chances that few individuals may survive. We can understand above discussion with the help of an example. If water temperature of bacteria living in temperate water increases due to global warming, most of the bacteria perishes. Few variants which are resistant to heat may survive and flourish. So we can say that variation is important for survival of species. Types of reproduction. Asexual reproduction. Reproduction is of 2 types. Asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction. The production of a new organism from a single parent without the involvement of sex cells is called asexual reproduction. Example: binary fission in amoeba, budding in hydra, spore formation in rhizopus, and vegetative reproduction in flowering plants. In asexual reproduction, cell divisions are amitotic or mitotic. The new individuals produced are genetically identical to their parents, and it is fast mode of multiplication. The disadvantages of asexual reproduction are that identical organisms are produced generation after generation, and evolutionary changes are not possible as variation does not occur. Fission. In fission, a fully grown parent divides into 2 or more than 2 daughters. It is the simplest method of asexual reproduction in unicellular organisms such as amoeba, paramecium, and other protozoa. Fission is of 2 types: binary fission, multiple fission. Binary fission is the division of one cell into 2 similar or identical cells during favorable conditions. In this method, the nucleus first divides amitotically into 2, followed by the division of the cytoplasm. The cell finally splits into two daughter cells. Examples: bacteria, yeast, euglena, amoeba, and paramecium. Multiple fission is parental fission. Parental body divides into many daughter cells simultaneously during the unfavorable conditions. The nucleus of the cell divides repeatedly, producing many nuclei. Each nucleus is surrounded by a small amount of cytoplasm, and many daughter cells are produced within cyst. The cyst breaks up under favorable conditions, and small offsprings are liberated. Example of multiple fission is that of malaria parasite Plasmodium. Budding. In building one or more unicellular or multicellular outgrowths, called buds, are formed on or inside the parental body. Hydra reproduces by budding using the regenerative cell division at one specific site. When fully mature, the bud detaches itself from the parent body and develops into new independent individuals. Spore formation. When a slice of bread is kept in moist and dark place for few days, spores of rhizopus present in the air settle on the bread to form new fungus plants of rhizopus. The rhizopus has a knob-like structure which is involved in reproduction called sporangia, containing spores that develop into new rhizopus. Regeneration. The process of getting back a full organism from its body parts is called regeneration. It is the ability of a fully differentiated organism to give rise to new individual organisms from its body parts. Small cut or broken parts of the organism's body grow or regenerate into separate individuals. Simple organisms like Hydra and Planaria can be cut into any number of pieces, and each piece grows into a complete organism. Fragmentation. In fragmentation, parental body breaks into two or more fragments, either by wave action or by death or decay of older parts. Multicellular organisms with simple body organizations such as filamentous algae Spirogyra breaks up into two or more small pieces or fragments upon maturation. These fragments grow into new individuals. Among animals, flatworms show fragmentation of the body which develops into new individuals. Fragmentation is found in algae such as Spirogyra. Vegetative reproduction. Vegetative reproduction is process of multiplication in which new plants are obtained from the parts of old plants like stems, roots, and leaves without the help of any reproductive organ. Vegetative propagation is of two types: natural vegetative propagation, artificial vegetative propagation. Natural vegetative propagation. Among seed plants, natural vegetative propagation is very common. It is of three types: by roots, by stem, and by leaves. By roots. Some plants develop adventitious buds on them, example guava, shisham. Some tuberous adventitious roots, besides possessing adventitious buds, also contain sufficient quantities of food, example dahlia and sweet potato. By stem. Some plants reproduce by means of stem straggling, and branched rhizomes reproduce by vegetative reproduction. Example: banana, ginger, turmeric. Stem tubers are found in potato and artichoke. Tuber of potato is a swollen apical part of an underground stem branched, bears a number of nodes or eyes. Each eye bears one or more buds. New plants are produced from the buds on the eyes. The potato crop is raised by tubers and not by seeds. Runner is aerial weak stem, for example in lawn grass, mint and wood. Sorrel, when touches the ground, gives off adventitious roots at nodes. When the older part of plant dies, the branches separate from the parent plant and form independent plants. A bulb also bears a number of buds, example, garlic and onion. Corms like crocus, colocasia, etc. have sufficient stored food and also bear many adventitious buds. By leaves. In some plants, notched margins of fleshy leaves bear adventitious buds. When the leaf falls on the soil, the buds develop into small plants under favorable condition. These plantlets, on being detached, develop into independent plants. Example: Bryophyllum, begonia. Artificial vegetative propagation. Gardeners and horticulturists have developed the various methods of artificial vegetative propagation. Some common methods are by cutting, layering, grafting, budding, tissue culture. Cutting. A cutting is separated portion of root, stem or leaf which is buried partly in moist soil. Many plants like sugarcane, rose, citrus, duranta, grapes, cocoa, bougainvillea, carnations and chrysanthemum are propagated by means of cutting. Layering. The adventitious roots are produced in the branch of the stem before the plant is detached from the parent plant. The branch of stem is called a layer and phenomenon is called layering. This method is used in lemon, guava, hibiscus, bougainvillea, jasmine, raspberry and many ornamental plants. Grafting. In this method of reproduction, two plants of closely related varieties are joined together so that they live as one plant. The portion of a plant that is grafted on the other plant is called scion, and the plant in which grafting is performed is called the stalk. Examples: mango, apple, peas, citrus and guava. Budding. In budding, a bud with small portion of surrounding bark is taken from the stem of a desired plant. It is then inserted into a small slit made in the bark of stalk. Both are tied together and not allowed to dry. Example: rose, plums, etc. Tissue culture. It is the production or propagation of new plants from isolated plant cells or small pieces of plant tissue in a synthetic medium of culture solution. Plants are grown by removing tissues or separating cells from the growing tip of the plant and put in an artificial medium. The plant tissue divides to form a small group of cells called callus. The callus is transferred to another medium containing hormones for growth and differentiation that forms plantlets. The plantlets produced are transplanted into pots or soil where they can grow to form mature plants. It is also known as micropropagation in vitro because it takes place outside the parent plant body in a test tube using an artificial environment. It is being used for the production of ornamental plants like orchids, dahlia, and carnation. Advantages and disadvantages of vegetative propagation. Let us discuss some of the advantages and disadvantages of vegetative propagation. Did you know, during multiple fission in liver, Plasmodium produces about 1,000 daughter cells, while during multiple fission inside the red blood corpuscles, it produces 12 to 24 daughter cells called merocytes. Reparative regeneration is the process of reformation of damaged cells of the body. Example, wound healing and replacement of dead RBCs by new RBCs in man. Regenerative regeneration is the process of redevelopment of lost body part. Example, tail in lizard, hydra, planaria, etc. Bulbils are small, fleshy, specialized buds. When they fall on the ground, they produce new individuals. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. The process in which new organisms are formed by existing organisms is called reproduction. In asexual reproduction, new individual comes from single parent. Some organisms like Spirogyra, upon maturation, break up into smaller fragments which grow into new individuals. In plants like money plant, rose, grapes, etc., vegetative propagation is done by cutting. In layering, a branch of plant bearing the tips of the branch exposed is bent towards ground and covered with moist soil. Grafting is a method in which cut stems of two different plants, stalk and chignon, are joined together in such a way they develop into single plant. Various methods of asexual reproduction found in animals are fission, budding, fragmentation, and regeneration. Fission involves division of the parental organism into two or more daughter cells. Fission is of two types, binary and multiple fission. In binary fission, two daughter cells are formed. In multiple fission, many daughter cells are formed. Budding involves formation of one or more unicellular or multicellular buds on or inside the parental body. Buds are unicellular in yeasts, while are multicellular in hydra, sponges, etc. Buds may be exogenous or endogenous. Fragmentation involves breaking of parental body into two or more fragments, each of which develops into an organism. Regeneration involves repair of damaged tissues, or redevelopment of several body parts, or formation of whole body from a body fragment. The power of regeneration is more in lower organisms due to less specialization in them.
Introduction. As we have already discussed that reproduction is the ability of all organisms to produce young ones similar to themselves in most of characters. Yes, Madhuri, and the process which involves fusion of male and female gametes to form a new individual is known as sexual reproduction.
Objectives. At the end of this lesson, you'll be able to define sexual reproduction, understand the sexual reproduction in flowering plants, understand structure of flower, identify structure and types of seeds, understand structure of unisexual flower, identify structure of bisexual flower, understand structure of neuter flower, identify monoecious and dioecious plants, understand functions of flower, identify structure and types of inflorescence, understand process of pollination and its types, understand process of fertilization, identify structure of ovule, understand process of syngamy, understand process of triple fusion, understand process of double fertilization. Significance of sexual mode of reproduction. Sexual reproduction promotes diversity of characters in the offsprings. It results in new combination of genes brought together in the gamete, and this reshuffling increases genetic variation. It plays a prominent role in the origin of new species of combining DNA from two individuals during reproduction. Sexual reproduction in flowering plants. In the early stage, the plants are just leafy or in vegetative phase, and when they grow and reproduce or are in reproductive phase, the flowers are born. Therefore, we can say that flowers are the reproductive parts of plant body. The flower. A flower is brightly colored reproductive part of a plant. The stalk of flower is called pedicel. Swollen flat tip of pedicel forms the thalamus. The four types of floral leaves, sepals, petals, stamens, and carpel appear from thalamus. Sepals and petals are non-essential parts of a flower for reproduction, while stamens and carpels constitute the essential parts of a flower and contain the germ cells. Sepals or calyx are green and form the outermost whorl of flower. Petals or corolla lie next to sepals. They are usually colored to attract the insects for pollination. Stamens or androecium are next to petals. Each stamen is made up of stalk-like filament and flattened knob like anther. Anther bears pollen sacs which produce pollen grains. Stamens represent the male part of the flower. Carpel or gynoecium is the female part of flower and forms the central part of a flower. Carpel shows basal swollen ovary, middle elongated style, and upper knob-like part called stigma. Ovary bears ovules, which are converted into seeds. The fruits encloses and protect seeds. Seeds. Seeds are matured ovules. Seeds contain an embryo and reserve food which is used by developing embryo at the time of seedling formation. A mature seed is made up of two important parts: seed coat, embryo. Seed coat is hard layer which protects the internal parts of seed. Embryo is made up of radicle, plumule, and cotyledons. Radicle forms young root and plumule forms young shoot. Seeds are monocotyledonous when they have one or dicotyledonous when they have two cotyledons. Seeds may be endospermic when they have endosperm or non-endospermic when they do not have endosperm. Activity. Let us conduct an activity to clearly understand the structure of seed. We will soak few seeds of Bengal gram and few seeds of maize and keep them overnight. Next day morning we will drain the excess water and cover these seeds with wet cloth for a day. Next day we will cut open both types of seeds into halves. We observe that Bengal gram seed has seed coat, radicle, plumule and two cotyledons, while maize seed has seed coat, radicle, plumule and one cotyledon. Unisexual flowers. Flowers that bear either stamen or pistil are called unisexual. Example: papaya, watermelon. Bisexual flowers. Flowers that contain both stamen and pistil are termed as bisexual or hermaphrodite. Example: pea, hibiscus and mustard. Neuter flowers. Plants in which flowers lack both stamen or pistil are known as neuter. Example: mango, cashew. Monoecious and dioecious plants. Plants that bear both types of unisexual flowers are called monoecious plants. Example: maize, cucurbit and castor. Plants that bear one type of unisexual flowers are called dioecious plants. Example: date palm, mulberry. Functions of a flower. Flower bears male sex organs stamen and female sex organs carpels. Flower is the part of the plant that takes part in sexual reproduction. Ovary matures to form fruit and contains seeds. Inflorescence. Flowers do not always occur singly. The flowers, which are small in size, often occur in clusters. An axis bearing a cluster of flowers is known as inflorescence. It may be terminal or axillary. Cauliflower is a very good example of inflorescence. Pollination. A new seed of the plant is formed when male gamete present in a pollen grain unites with the female gamete present in the ovule. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a stamen to the stigma of a carpel. The pollen grains are transferred by many agents such as insects, birds, man and water. Pollination is of two types: self-pollination, cross-pollination. When the pollen grains from anther of a flower are transferred to the stigma of the same flower or anther flower of same plant, it is known as self-pollination. When the pollen grains from anther of a flower are transferred to the stigma of another flower of another plant of same species, then it is known as cross-pollination. Fertilization. After a pollen grain falls on stigma, the next step is fertilization. Fertilization is the fusion of male and female gametes to form a zygote. During sexual reproduction, this happens in following steps. When a pollen grain falls on the stigma of the carpel, it bursts open and grows a pollen tube downwards through style towards the female gamete in the ovary. Two male gametes are formed in pollen tube. A male gamete moves down the pollen tube. The pollen tube enters the ovule in the ovary. The tip of the pollen tube bursts open and male gamete comes out of the pollen tube. In ovary, the male gamete of pollen combines with the nucleus of female gamete or egg present in ovule to form a fertilized egg called zygote. After fertilization, the zygote divides several times to form an embryo within the ovule. The ovule then develops a tough coat and gets converted into a seed. The seed is the reproductive unit of a plant. It contains a future embryo which develops into seedling. Ovule. A minute structure in seed plants containing the embryo sac and surrounded by the nucleus which develops into a seed after fertilization. It consists of three parts: the integuments forming its outer layers, the nucellus or megasporangium, and megaspore-derived female gametophyte or megagametophyte in its center. The megagametophyte, also called embryo sac in flowering plants, produces an egg cell or several egg cells in some groups for fertilization. After fertilization, the ovule develops into a seed. Syngamy. One of the male gamete fuses with egg to form diploid zygote. It is called syngamy. Triple fusion. Second male gamete fuses with secondary nucleus to form primary endosperm nucleus. This is called triple fusion because three nuclei are involved in the fusion process: one male gamete and two polar nuclei. Double fertilization. The process of fertilization, which occurs twice in the same embryo sac at a time by two male gametes, syngamy and triple fusion, is called double fertilization. Did you know pollination by birds is called ornithophily? In hydrophilous flowers, pollen grains are light but covered with wax. Edible pollen are produced by Rosa, Magnolia and Clematis. Zostera bear longest pollen about 2500 μm long, while smallest pollen is of Myosotis about 2.5 to 3.5 μm long. Erythrina is pollinated by crows and squirrels. Hay fever is caused due to allergic reaction to the presence of pollen in air. Parthenogenesis is defined as a development of egg without fertilization. Process of fruit without fertilization is called parthenocarpy. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. The reproductive parts of a higher plant are located in a flower. Stamen is the male reproductive part of a plant. Carpel is present in the center of a flower and is the female reproductive part. The transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma is called pollination. Pollination is of two types, self-pollination and cross-pollination. The ovary ripens to form a fruit. The fruit dehisces to release the seeds. Each seed contains a future plant and on germination produces a new individual.
Introduction. As we have already discussed that reproduction is the ability of all organisms to produce young ones similar to themselves in most of characters. Yes, and the process which involves fusion of male and female gametes to form a new individual is known as sexual reproduction.
Objectives. At the end of this lesson, you'll be able to define sexual reproduction, understand the sexual reproduction in human beings, understand puberty, identify changes at maturity, identify male reproductive organs, identify female reproductive organs, understand process of reproduction in human beings, understand menstruation. Sexual reproduction in human beings. Human beings are unisexual or dioecious. Two sexes are also different in certain external morphological features called secondary sexual characters, which is called sexual dimorphism. In human beings, the reproductive organs, testes in male and ovary in female, becomes functional only after attaining sexual maturity. Puberty or sexual maturity. Puberty is the period of sexual maturity during adolescence when reproductive organs become functional. In human, male sexual maturity is attained at the age of 13 to 14 years, while in females at the age of 10 to 12 years. The testes and ovaries produce viable gametes and also secrete hormones like testosterone from testes in male and estrogen and progesterone from ovary in female. Changes at sexual maturity. Both boys and girls undergo thick hair growth in armpits and genital areas between thighs. Thinner hair on legs, arms and face, and oily skin and appearance of pimples. Among girls, beginning of ovulation from the ovaries and menstrual cycle. Enlargement of breasts due to deposition of fats. Darkening of nipple skin. Stoppage of growth of bones and height. And maturation of secondary sex organs like fallopian tubes, uterus, etc. Among boys, the germ cells of seminiferous tubules of testes start producing sperms. Secondary sex organs like prostate gland, penis, etc. undergo maturation. Penis becomes enlarged and erect either in daydreams or during night. Penis is required for the actual transfer of sperms from male to female. And broadening of shoulders, deepening of voice, increase in height, etc. Male reproductive system. Male reproductive organs consists of portions that produce germ cells and other portions that deliver the germ cells to the site of fertilization. The human male reproductive organs are testes, epididymis, vas deferens, urethra, penis. Testes. Testes are one pair small-sized, oval-shaped and pinkish-colored organs present in thin-walled skin pouches called scrotal sacs, extra-abdominal in position. Scrotal sacs act as thermoregulators as they keep testicular temperature 1 to 3 degrees Celsius lower than the body temperature for normal spermatogenesis, because the high body temperature may kill the sperm-forming tissues of testes. Testes have about 900 narrow and convoluted seminiferous tubules with sperm-forming germ cells. Germ cells form sperms by spermatogenesis. Epididymis. Epididymis is a coiled tube-like structure firmly attached to the testes and serves as the storehouse of sperms where they become mature and develop motility. Vas deferens. The sperms are carried by long tube called vas deferens or sperm duct into organs called seminal vesicles where the sperms get nourished and stored. Urethra. Urethra is also long, narrow and tubular structure. It is formed by the joining of ejaculatory duct and duct from urinary bladder, so carries both sperms and urine, and is also commonly called urinogenital canal. It passes through penis and opens at its tip. Penis. Penis forms the external male genital organ. It is a cylindrical erectile copulatory organ with thick muscular walls. Its sensitive tip is called glans, which is covered by a retractile skin fold called prepuce. Male reproductive glands. In man there are 3 types of reproductive glands: seminal vesicles, prostate gland, and Cowper's glands. Seminal vesicles are a pair of thin-walled muscular elongated sac which secretes fluid for nourishment of sperms. Prostate gland is a single, large-sized and lobulated gland present just below the urinary bladder. It produces fluid which is released in the urethra along with secretion of seminal vesicle. Cowper's glands are a pair of white, pea-seed-sized glands present at the base of penis. It secretes alkaline semen, which neutralizes acidity of urine and activates sperms and provides nutrition to the sperms. Sperms. A human sperm is minute microscopic motile and flagellated gamete. It is formed of head, middle piece, and a long and vibratile tail. It fuses with ovum and transmits parental gene to offspring. Female reproductive system. The female germ cells or eggs are made in the ovaries and are responsible for the production of some hormones. The human female reproductive organs are ovaries, fallopian tubes, uterus, vagina. Ovaries. Ovaries are the primary sex organs of female and are one pair, small-sized almond-shaped and whitish structure present in the pelvis of abdomen. Internally, each ovary is with large number of immature primary or ovarian follicles. Ovary forms ova by oogenesis in the germ cells and secretes estrogens and progesterone. Fallopian tubes. Fallopian tubes are one pair of elongated, ciliated, muscular and tubular structures extending from just close to ovaries to uterus. The outer part of each fallopian tube lying close to ovary has a wide aperture called ostium and a number of finger-like processes called fimbriae to receive the ovum released from the ovary. Uterus. Uterus is large-sized muscular and pear-shaped structure present in the pelvis between the urinary bladder and rectum and is the seat of implantation, placentation and fetal development. Its internal lining is highly vascular and glandular and is called cervix, which opens into the vagina. Vagina. Vagina is a long muscular tubular structure which extends backwards from cervix of uterus and finally opens outside by vaginal aperture in the vestibule. Vagina acts as copulation canal as semen is discharged in it during copulation and birth canal as the baby passes through it during childbirth. Process of sexual reproduction in human beings. The male gamete or sperms are highly active and mobile, which move up through cervix into the uterus and then pass into the fallopian tubes. In fallopian tube, only one sperm fertilizes the ovum to form a zygote. This is called fertilization. It occurs only if sperm enters fallopian tube during the ovulatory period. The embryonic development of the zygote starts immediately in the fallopian tube and pregnancy starts while menstruation stops. The embryo moves down to reach the uterus. The embedding of embryo in the thick inner lining of the uterus is called implantation. Then, a special tissue develops between the uterine wall and the embryo called placenta, where the exchange of nutrients, oxygen, and waste products takes place. The time period from the development of fetus inside the uterus till birth is called gestation. The act of giving birth of fully developed fetus at the end of gestation period is termed as parturition. The development of the child inside the mother's body takes approximately 9 months' time. Menstruation. The breakdown and removal of inner, thick, and soft lining of a uterus along with its blood vessels in the form of vaginal bleeding is called menstrual flow or menstruation. The cycle of events taking place in the ovaries and uterus every 28 days, or roughly 1 month, and marked by the menstrual flow is called menstrual cycle or sexual cycle in human female. It lasts for about 2 to 8 days. Did you know sperms form only 10% of the semen? A female lays about 13 eggs in a year, while about 416 eggs during whole reproductive period of human female. Menarche is the beginning of menstruation of puberty, and menopause is period when ovulation and menstrual cycle permanently stops in human female. The average weight of a newly born baby is about 3.5 kilograms. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. Human beings are unisexual and show sexual dimorphism. Male reproductive system is formed of testes, epididymis, vas deferentia, urethra and penis. Accessory reproductive glands of male are seminal vesicles, prostrate glands and Cowper's glands. Female reproductive system is formed of ovaries, fallopian tubes, uterus, vagina and vulva. Accessory reproductive glands of female are Bartholin's glands and breasts. Menstrual cycle involves cyclic changes occurring in the ovaries and female reproductive tract during the reproductive period. It is completed in about 1 month. It is formed of 4 phases: follicle phase, ovulatory phase, luteal phase, and menstrual phase. It starts at puberty and permanently stops at menopause. Embryonic development involves the series of events which transform zygote into an embryo. It involves phases like gametogenesis, fertilization, cleavage, implantation, placentation, gastrulation, organogenesis, and parturition.
Introduction. As we have already discussed, that reproduction is the ability of all organisms to produce young ones similar to themselves in most of characters. Yes, and for the process of reproduction, we have to make sexual contact. But if we do this without any protection, then many diseases are spread from infected partner. Due to rapid growth in population, we observe population explosion. Yes, it is mainly due to rapid decline in death rate and increase in lifespan.
Objectives. At the end of this lesson, you'll be able to understand significance of reproductive health, identify sexually transmitted diseases, understand methods to control population, understand sex ratio, and identify population size. Reproductive health. Reproductive health is all those aspects of general health which help a person to lead a normal, safe, and satisfying reproductive life. Sexually transmitted diseases. The diseases which are transmitted by sexual contact from an infected person to a healthy person are known as sexually transmitted diseases. They are caused by various microorganisms that live in warm and moist environments of the vagina, urethra, anus, and mouth. Some of common sexually transmitted diseases are gonorrhea, syphilis, trichomoniasis, AIDS. Gonorrhea is caused by bacterium Neisseria gonorrhea. It is characterized by inflammation of urinogenital tract and the patient feel burning sensation during urination. This bacterium infects the ureter in men and the cervix in women. Syphilis is caused by bacterium Treponema palladium. It is characterized by lesions in the mucous membrane of urinogenital tract and ulcers on genitalia. Trichomoniasis is caused by protozoan Trichomonas vaginalis. It is characterized by some vaginal discharge at the urinogenital tract of the female. AIDS is caused by a virus called HIV, which suppresses the body's immune mechanism and thereby making it susceptible to any disease. Mode of transmission of AIDS is sexual contact, transfusion of blood from an infected person through infected needles used for injection through the placenta from the mother to child during pregnancy. Birth control methods. A number of techniques have been developed to prevent and control pregnancy. They are mainly of 3 types: mechanical barrier methods, chemical methods, surgical methods. Mechanical barrier methods. In mechanical barrier methods, physical devices such as condoms, diaphragm, and cervical caps are used, which prevents the entry of sperm in the female genital tract during copulation, thus acting as a barrier between them. The use of intrauterine contraceptive devices, IUCDs, prevents implantation of the uterus. This device is a copper T placed safely inside the uterus by a doctor. Chemical methods. In chemical methods, specific drugs are used by females, which are of two types: oral pills, vaginal pills. Oral pills are also called oral contraceptives, which act by changing the hormonal balance of the body so that eggs are not released and fertilization cannot occur. Surgical methods. In surgical methods, a small portion of vas deferens in male removed or tied. It is known as vasectomy, so that vas deferens is blocked, then sperm transfer will be prevented. In female, the fallopian tube is surgically removed or tied. It is known as tubectomy, so that the egg will not be able to reach the uterus, thus fertilization will not take place. Sex ratio. Sex ratio is ratio of number of female to the number of males in a population. The female-male ratio must be maintained for a healthy society. The female child sex ratio is declining at an alarming rate in some sections of our society because of reckless female feticide. Therefore, parental sex determination has been prohibited by law. Population size. Organisms increase their population with the help of reproduction. The rate of birth and death in a given population determines its size. The increase in population occurs when the birth rate is higher than the death rate. Did you know? Exponential phase of human population growth started in 1750 AD. Human population of world is expected to reach 9.5 billion within the next 30 years. India was first country to adopt family planning as the government-sponsored program in 1951. NACO, National AIDS Control Organization. India started a National AIDS Control Program in 1987. Every year, 1st December is celebrated as World AIDS Day. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. Rapid growth of human population is called population explosion. Main causes of it are rapid decline in death rate and increase in longevity. Population explosion results in number of ill effects, so there is an urgent need of population control. Population growth can be prevented by family planning programs, which involve various types of birth control measures like mechanical, chemical, surgical, and natural methods. Sexually transmitted diseases are transmitted during unsafe sexual act. Some commonly occurring STDs are AIDS, chlamydiosis, gonorrhea, syphilis, hepatitis B, genital herpes, trichomoniasis, etc. These can be managed and prevented by mutually faithful monogamous relationship and avoiding prostitution, multi-partner sex, and homosexuality.